Hi everyone, and welcome to another of our Clarity Media puzzle solving videos. Today we're going to be solving Nurikabe, which is a Japanese logic puzzle. And the aim of the puzzle is essentially to fill in the grid so that every one of these numbers is part of an island with the same number of squares as the number. So the 1, for instance, will be on its own, whereas each of these 2's will have 1 square attached to it, and the 3 will have 2 squares attached to it. In addition, the islands can't fuse together, and the C, which is the shaded squares in the middle, has to all connect. There's one other rule, which is that you can't have 2 by 2 blocks of C. So in the top corner here, for instance, one of these 4 squares has to be part of an island, or there'll be a 2 by 2 block. So I've started off by making a small Nurikabe, and I'll just walk you through how to solve it. So starting off, you look for if there are any numbers with a square adjacent to both of them, which isn't actually the case here. But if, let's say, that 1 was here, then this square would have to be shaded because it couldn't possibly be in part of either island without fusing them together. But that's not the case here. However, the 1 we know can't have anything next to it whatsoever, so I can start off by shading in these 2 squares. And now I know that, what I can do is now see if there are any parts on the map, on the grid as it were, which are not reachable by any island at all. So for instance, this top one in the corner I can see instantly is not in range of this 3. The 3 can get to here, max. It's also not in range of this 2, because the 2 can get to here. So this has to be shaded in. The same goes for, I think, this square here. And also actually this square here, because the 2. And now I can see that 3 of these are shaded and 1 is not shaded, which means this has to be unshaded. It's part of the 2, and I can put a dot there to show that. And this then allows me to shade in every square around it, because the islands are always surrounded by C. I should mention always surrounded horizontally and vertically. There can be diagonal connections. So I shade both of these then. So looking at the rest of the grid, I can see that some other squares are not in range of any of the numbers. So this square isn't in range of a number, so I can shade that in. This square here. And what that's telling me is after I've shaded this, I can see that this square here would be part of a 2 by 2 if it's shaded, which means this has to be one island. And I can then shade in every square around it. And they all start from this, so I can shade this in. And I can shade this in. So now I've reached this point, I can see this then has to be part of the island, or that will break the puzzle, which means this can't possibly be it because that has to be part of the 3. So that's an island and this is shaded. This is shaded here, and lastly I need to determine which part of the 2, which one of these squares is not shaded, and I can see, well, this is cut off. It's got to be part of the general C, but at the moment it's cut off by islands. So therefore this has to be shaded as well. And finally we can see if this one weren't shaded, it would be a 2 by 2 block. So this has to be unshaded and this is shaded, completing the small Nurikabe. Now let's move on to a slightly larger puzzle, because this one is quite small as a Nurikabe goes, and that means you can't have very high numbers, which does make it a fair bit easier. There are a lot of squares here which couldn't be reached by any number at all. But if I show you my other Nurikabe, which is, I think, a 7 by 7, you can see we've got 4s in this as well. and there is actually still quite a bit of blank space, but nonetheless it will be harder to figure out these parts in the middle. So there we go, the 7x7 Nurikabe, and I can start off here, as before, by shading in any of the squares which are adjacent to 2 numbers. So this is adjacent to 3 and 4, so I can shade this in. This is adjacent to 3, and of course the 1, in any case, the 1, every square next to it should be shaded. The one between the 2 4s here, I think that's all we have. So moving on, first we see that the 3 is actually forced here. Because it can't go either of these squares in that direction, it has to take up both of these, which means we can shade this square and finish the 3. Then, by doing some counting, we can see the only square which can possibly reach this 2x2 block in the bottom right corner is this 4. This 4 could get to there, but it can't get to there. So I'll rub that out. And we see this 4 can reach, and as the 3 can't reach either, it has to reach, which means at a stroke, we've actually eliminated all of these squares, or shaded them in, and set up that island there. This then means we can see this 4 can only go in one possible direction, which is here. And then you also see that this square again is cut off, like the square in the previous puzzle. Unless this is shaded, this one here will be cut off from the rest of the shaded squares. So to get around that, we have to shade this one. We then see that this square here has to be part of the 3. So by square counting, we can see that actually this 2x2 block in the top corner can only be reached by this 4. So we know the 4 has to get to here, which then means essentially this is one island, and all of these are shaded in again. So actually with the higher numbers, they can be hard to figure out, but once you have an entire higher number, it really does often shade a lot of the grid in. And now you can see, of course, that this square in the top left corner can't possibly be an island because it can't connect to any island, so that also has to be shaded in. See that this 4 here can't possibly reach this square either, so this square has to be shaded in. And we can now see that unless there is a square here, it will again create a 2x2 block. So that has to be a square. And there's 2 ways to reach it. It could be like this, or it could be like this. However, if it was this shape, so if it were the Z shape, the issue is that this 3 would have to, can't go there, so it has to go like this. And then if it was the Z shape, you can see that these 3 squares would actually be blocked off from joining the general shape, which means it has to be the sort of reverse L shape completing the puzzle. So there are 2 Nurikabe, the second one here, and I hope you enjoyed the video. I think Nurikabe is a very fun puzzle to solve. It can be very easy or it can be very difficult. I think the ones I showed here are really both on the easier end of the scale, but the harder ones can take quite a while and they're really rewarding. So I do recommend you check them out, and of course please do look at other videos, the solving videos, and have a nice day.